I guess we are, yeah. So we are rolling, we are on the air, and today we have Phantom Office on air with Rufia and Masha, Maria, KRÖLEX Center. And my name is Dmitry Vilensky. I will be very modest moderator of this session. And as I said, my name is Dmitry Vilensky, but as you see in my screen, I'm from Institute of Radical Imagination, which is another kind of not so phantom as KRÖLEX Center organization, but at the same time, we could also consider as a meeting of two institutions, which is also very interesting because I guess in many ways we discuss certain institutional buildings and we talk a lot about it. And also I can add that we have very passionate and personal relations between me and Olga Egorova and Что делать collective, which bring us together already for many, many years. We knew each other before. We heard some gossips about there are some people in Almaty, and you should definitely meet. You enjoy it. They're so special, and they're really special. And I hope today you really enjoy it. And right now, both our guests are in Vienna, but at the same time, it doesn't matter much, or maybe it matters as we discover later. And right now we are in this virtual space, which actually very much match that the essence of that rootless nature of KRÖLEX Center. And I hope we can start, and I give the floor to you. And today we expect many magic things, which already started, as I see in your screens. And we are welcome whatever will happen. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for this kind introduction. We're happy to be here. Masha, I don't see Masha. Maybe she is not here, but we have to start anyways.
She's here.
Really? But
yeah,
I just
she's
can't
smiling.
see. I can't see her. Okay. Anyways, here comes our opening session because we are like a TV show, so we have a opening sequence with the music. Good twilights. Welcome to our little phantom office that is broadcasting today due to the kind invitation from the Institute of Radical Imagination and Dmitry Vilensky. Thank you. My name is Ruth, and I will be your guide during the next 30-40 minutes
of the show.
Unfortunately, my partner artist Masha couldn't make it here today, or could she? Masha, are you here somewhere?
It feels strange.
It feels strange to me to be here without Masha.
Without Rufi.
KRÖLEX Center has always been a collective affair, first of all.
In other
words, it's all about being with someone, about seeing each other, about acknowledging each other, about the question, how can we know each other without examining, objectifying each other, without violating our thin boundaries? Our preferable pronoun is we.
But what can it even
What
mean
can this we even mean today? Every instance of we is different.
Every
Every I at a closer look becomes we. This is something to keep in mind. What looks like one is always the many. At least if we have a look at KRÖLEX Center on the stage or as an institution, it's easy to notice that there are always at least two people on stage.
Перформанс называется «Ничто», и актер должен исполнять ничего. Конец.
Уже 20 секунд прошло, не теряем даром времени. Участник.
Да, звуки.
Креольский центр – это воображаемое учреждение культуры, не существующее в реальности, что не вполне верно, учитывая воображаемый характер этой последней.
Деятельность центра не выходит за рамки производства небольших текстов, рисуночков, карт, жестов, криков, песен, хлопков, прыжков.
Падений, барахтаний, колебаний, вибраций, эмоциональных разрядов.
А если у вас нет мозгов?
Бульканье искр, фонтанчиков, ручейков, громыханий посуды, топота, завываний, повторений.
Лауреат всех премий, такой, знаете, важный, что-то такое посмотрел, тоже начинает копировать какие-то формы, которые уже есть в искусстве. Ну и это такой, мне кажется, очень гибкий художник, который, значит, в этом такой вот, ну не знаю, как многорукий шива такой.
А ты кто? Ты кто?
Я квир.
Ах ты квир!
Ну и что с того, что я квир?
А то, что я сейчас тебя стулом запущу.
Нет, не надо.
Да почему же не надо?
Ну а зачем?
Ты думаешь, раз ты квир, так тебя и стулом уже нельзя?
Давай,
А я думаю, наоборот.
А летучие рыбы
Должны быть достойны.
Очень достойны.
Ваших предков. Непонятно, о каких именно предках идет речь. Вы, наверное, слышали про концепцию любовного куратора.
Ты же посещала лекции Виктора Медиана?
Пошли его, вот, загляните ко мне.
Скажите, пожалуйста, а вы левый или правый философ?
Это очень евроцентричное разделение.
Я стараюсь быть над схваткой. Ты будешь говорить только правду, поняла?
Поняла?
Счет 3.
3.
Да.
Угу.
Раз.
Сколько можно в маленьком мире в окружении своих плюшевых игрушек? Ты же взрослый художник. Ну, ты должен обратиться к окружающей тебя социальной действительности.
Он тебя не должен. Чего ты прикопалась к пацану?
Каким быть общественному строю должен решать народ, а его пытаются лишить этого права.
Теперь поднимите руки вверх. Раз. Опустите вниз. 2.
Разрешите представить вашему вниманию первый, единственный и последний контрмонумент памяти Джона Ивановича Кейджа. Нам нужна тишина. Но тишине нужно, чтобы мы продолжали говорить. И вот мы решили подписать некоторые штуки. Вот мы подписали примерно 150 метров этого маршрута. И так получилось, что здесь пересекается очень много тем, которыми мы интересуемся. В частности, тема ограничения доступа. Появляется тема феминистская, появляется тема ЛГБТ. Люди начинают говорить, вот геи, лесбиянки, что нам с ними делать? Вот трансгендерные люди, ну как с этим быть? Вот феминизм, он же подрывает устои общества. Я думаю, что даже когда люди ругаются, высказывают свои отрицательные мнения, это все равно как бы неплохо, потому что постепенно мы приучаемся к тому, что такие вещи есть, и они проникают в нас помимо нашей воли.
Псевдотектоника изучает разломы и трещины в доминирующем нормативном гендерном порядке.
Тут могут быть какие-то, может быть, нетрадиционные, традиционные дела, что ли, делать? Скажи еще, что твоя мама киви не кладет никогда.
И вот границы между родственниками, друзьями и коллегами сейчас размываются, и мифология крови, она теряет свою такую вот суггестивную силу.
Это множество находится посередине, пишет Вирно, между индивидуальным и коллективным. И разница между общественным и частным для него не имеет никакого значения.
Вот мы приехали из Казахстана, но здесь люди себя чувствуют не дома, понимаешь? У нас нет гражданства, значит, у нас меньше прав. Это имеет большое значение в естественных видов. И почему мы так любим деревья и так доверяем им, и заботимся о том, чтобы деревьев было больше? Потому что дерево — это такая штука, которая глубоко укоренена, и мы знаем, что эти корни, они обеспечивают как бы полную предсказуемость любого дерева.
Man, the man without qualities, man the player, sounding proudly on sinking reed, the rat man, homunculus, being of sins, condemned to freedom, the desiring machine, it's okay. But woman man, I suppose there was nothing like that before.
We smell like oil, and Kazakhstan smells like oil, and Venezuela smells like oil, and Russia smells like oil, and China smells like oil, and our death smells like oil, and as we all know, the eternity itself smells like bloody oil, doesn't it?
Я на сцене.
Я всегда мечтала быть на сцене, и вот наконец я добралась. We had some good times, but now they're gone. And the crisis coming on, oil is almost gone.
Они обсуждают почему-то степень лояльности населения Чехии Путину. Никому не нужна война, разве что черненькому. Подрываюсь с пола и кричу: какому черненькому? Кто такой этот, вашу мать, черненький? С удивлением хором: Обама?
Мир состоит из квантовых полей числом 24.
And now we're not conforming anymore. Now we're not conforming. And at this moment, things become what they really are. And we again conforming.
Если у кого-то есть мысль что-нибудь спеть или сыграть, в вашем распоряжении есть целая сцена.
Okay, I think this is time to stop this. Thank you for watching our advertisement. But still, the question of major question. Our we, the we, drawing a line, fencing, imposing. Institution does that. Military institution. New ways.
Машу, сделай погромче. Там плохо слышно.
We just would like to show you the creation of new versions of we.
Ongi seotud, üks on seotud selle kliimaga, tal on ka olnud suur nähtavus viimastel aastatel.
Okay, just a short example of how political subjects are created by police in Kazakhstan.
Аружан Дюсебаева, одна из вышедших в день выборов на протест, простояла в числе других активистов в кольце полицейского спецназа почти 10 часов. С площади республики ее с переохлаждением увезла скорая помощь.
Жедел жәрдем келген кезде мен шынымды айтсам, есімді онша білген жоқпын мүлдем. Кішкене қатты ауырым қырап, аяқ қолдарым бәрі дірілдеді. Сол жерде белсенді Диана деген әпкеміз болған, оның да аяғы ауыр, алаңнан шыққан. Сол кезде сол аяқ қолымды уқалап жатқанын ғана білем. Одан кейін келесі жедел жәрдем көлігіне ауыстырды. Содан кейін қан қысымын өлшеді. Одан кейін мұрныма бір нәрселер ескетіп жатқанын білемін. Одан кейін больницаға бардық.
Полицейские не проявили ни капли жалости ни к сторонникам незарегистрированной демократической партии, призывавшим бойкотировать выборы, ни к участникам движения «Оян Казахстан», требовавшим ухода бывшего президента Назарбаева из политики, говорят находившиеся в окружении СОБРа. Их удерживали в тесном пространстве, на морозе, без еды, питья и даже возможности справить нужду.
Ең қиыны, ең көргенсіздігі, адамсыздығы олардың ешкімді әжетханаға да жібермей, сосын біз ыстық шайларын, тамақтарын жіберейік десек, оларды да жібергізбей, заңгерлерімізді, құқық қорғаушыларымызды, адвокаттарымызды жібермей, сол ненің ішінде ұстап тұрды, котелдің ішінде ұстап тұрды собырлар. Одан қалғаны ішіне осы тұртық қоршалып, соның ішіне провокаторларды кіргізіп, олар бізді ұрып соғып, сосын шығып кетеді. Оның ішінде мысалы біздің чемпион, олимпиаданың чемпионы Ермахан Ибраимов бар.
Во время столкновения в оцеплении Асем Жапишева получила повреждение позвоночника. Ее увезли с площади на скорой. Активистка Гульсада Сержан, помогавшая девушкам выйти из окружения и сама стоявшая в кольце СОБРа, называет действия спецназа пыткой.
Тас құрсау болып ұстап тұрды. 3 қатар жас тепсе темір үзетін жігіттер ұстап тұрды. Сол жерде енді 3 әйел мен бастадым.
Спецназ использовал кеттеринг, прием окружения протестующих второй раз за месяц. 16 декабря сторонники Демпартии и активисты «Оян Казахстан» вынуждены были стоять в кольце СОБРа 3 часа. Представители правозащитной организации Human Rights Watch и Норвежского Хельсинского комитета назвали этот прием репрессивной тактикой в отношении мирных демонстрантов. Они призвали президента Казахстана Касым-Жомарта Токаева прекратить нарушение прав человека.
So being a cultural organization, we not only talk about but also answer questions. We are engaged in the correspondence and have to constant answer questions. So if you have any, please put them in chat, or so that they are not lost and not forgotten. We can answer them later. Not that the questions are asked frequently, but we answer them nevertheless quite often. That's why our Phantom Office has a rubric called Frequently Answered Questions. I mean, you don't have to ask a question in order to answer it, right? So we would like to take this opportunity and offer some answers right now. Masha, maybe we have already some questions that
Включи микрофон.
Masha, sorry for interruption. We don't hear you well. Roof is perfect, but your voice is really very weak and disappearing.
But before Masha was there, right? Her voice.
At the test it was okay, but now something happened.
Masha, try talking.
Yeah.
Now we can hear
now it's
you.
better. Yeah.
Now it's better. Okay.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
So the question.
Now perfect.
Sorry, one moment, please, because something is not. Okay, here is a question. You are saying that KRÖLEX Center is an otherworldly institution, not exclusively a human one. What does it mean? And the next question is also similar. What do we mean by a community that is more than human? Are there any examples?
Well, yeah, it's difficult to designate a community that is more than human, because there are a lot of things that are not human, but we didn't want to limit our imaginary community to those who belong to, Kazakh culture, for instance, or Russian culture or Central Asian culture or contemporary culture or even human culture, if there is any. I'm not quite sure, but maybe. The most interesting thing about KRÖLEX Center is that it's unknown what agency is hiding behind this organization. I mean, there's definitely a puppeteer, like puppeteer pulling the strings, but who is pulling the strings? We assume that not all of our workers and management are humans, but it's quite difficult to be more specific, actually. So
Yeah. But as for our everyday working routine, it's much more obvious. There are many non-human entities involved in our work. Usually, these entities are called just objects. Human call objects everyone who doesn't not speak human language. The implication here is that those who don't speak also don't exist the way we do. So the question whether objects exist in their own right or just to the extent that they are represented in human consciousness is still open, this question. It would be interesting to know what objects themselves think about this problem. Could we ask them now? How do you think, Hirufi? Could we?
okay, let's give the word to the.
Добрый день. Большое спасибо, что пригласили нас поучаствовать в вашем ток-шоу. Такая роль для нас не совсем привычна.
Я бы даже сказала, совсем непривычно. Дело в том, что мы не уверены, что собравшаяся публика... Да-да, вот ты перестань ковырять носу. Что собравшаяся публика готова принять наше существование как самостоятельное и независимое от ваших человеческих суждений.
Да, это как-то затруднительно ответить на ваш вопрос. Вот, представьте, что вы приглашены на конференцию инопланетян, которые обсуждают, являются ли люди реальными сами по себе, или же они реальны только в той мере, в которой они представлены в инопланетном сознании. Ну.
И если вы не знаете их языка и не знакомы с созданными ими системами значений, вы не сможете доказать им свою реальность.
Не сможете. И более того, вы скорее решите, что и не нужно ничего доказывать. Да? Не нужно доказывать.
Да, вам даже может показаться слишком самонадеянной эта их идея. То, что не коммуницирует с нами, того и нет.
Да, не коммуницирует, того и нет.
Yeah, let's pick the next question. I think there is something about objects. Do you think artistic actions like painting, for example, is inherently objectifying, or on the contrary? Does the art turn scene into objects or into subjects? This is the question. This is
Okay. Sorry, it was, yeah. So the question is art somehow objectifying, or on the contrary, subjectifying? I don't know. I think that the figure of artist is usually some, artist is usually perceived as a subject, of course, but what surrounds him are turning into objects.
Yeah, and I agree that first of all, it's a dichotomy that is problematic.
Like object-subject dichotomy.
Yeah. But does an artist turn everything around him into objects, or should I say everything around her? I prefer her, actually. What does gender have to do with this? Let's see. Now we will look a performance by the most famous Kazakh contemporary artist Sergei Maslov that took place in Almaty in 1998.
This is Maslov making his one of the first gallery performances in Almaty. Maslov was born in beginning of 50s and he died in 2002, I guess. Now he's founding father of contemporary art in Kazakhstan. And this performance is quite notable.
Оказалось очень далеко от понятия художественного.
Involved into provided their and for the I don't know if this video answers the question, but maybe if we show only this one video, it would be, it has to be counterbalanced somehow. That's why I think it would be nice to show another archive video, another performance that took place about the same time in Almaty. This is a performance by Kazakh artist Shayziya, who is not that well known as Maslov. Also because he wasn't collaborating with any gallery, and often what he did just on the streets. That's why I think this particular performance is really worth seeing. Or but where is it? It's here. Sorry.
Алло. Милиция. Здесь собралась толпа народу, не знает почему, что делать. Но мне кажется, все-таки нужно один наряд или два наряда. 6, 7. Так, 3 наряда. 3 наряда. 3 наряда не очень. Мафия свято оборвала. Так, вы молодой человек, вы почему выдернули шнур? Вам не стыдно?
An old phone and some handmade.
Ну вы как всегда вовремя, конечно, ну молодой человек. Извините, конечно. Так. Алло. Меня слышно? Юра, сам знаешь, что едет, кто знает, где 9-я бригада у нас. Значит так, перед вами представители авангардистов. Рядом со мной охраняет меня. Юра, фамилию я не скажу. Фамилию вы знаете в РОВД. Меня зовут Зия. Мы представляем клуб «Шайзия» и компания группа «Ганжа» «Авангардная музыка». Спонсор в честь праздника мы и приглашаем на выставку современного искусства. Выставка сегодня бесплатна. Послезавтра она будет стоить 3 рубля входной билет. Имейте в виду, что уже билеты проданы в месяц вперед. То есть мы каждый день принимаем 3000 человек. Так что имейте в виду. В честь праздника мы вас приглашаем на выставку. Вот уже люди пошли, они хотят, как говорится, посмотреть наши работы без вас. Наша выставка современного искусства зарегистрирована. Эти сведения вон к тем товарищам в форме, которые нас слушают. Так что мы не боимся. Мы готовы провести выставку. Но это их проблемы, это их, как говорится, работа. Но ваше посещение нашей выставки будет очень приятно не только вам, но и нам, так как мы художники хотим. Вот еще один художник подошел, кстати, он был на нашей выставке, на республиканской выставке, и очень доволен остался. Это правда, молодой человек? Кивните головой. Все? Он сказал совершенно верно. Так что, товарищи, спешите на нашу выставку. Выставка находится во дворе этого здания. Здание очень старинное, красивое, а слева на нашу выставку. Выставка «Авангард». Вы знаете, что такое авангард? Вы знаете, что за работу Малевича, Кандинского на Западе уже дают миллионы долларов? Вы знаете, что нашу выставку хотели купить тоже за большую сумму денег? Я не знаю, мы еще не говорили, на какую сумму. У нас есть книга отзывов, где там подтверждается в газете Алматинского обкома и облисполкома. Что вы хотите сказать этим? Выставка современного искусства, идите посмотрите. Во дворе этого здания вы увидите нашу выставку. Да. Пожалуйста, свяжитесь. Давайте. Вы так считаете? А на каком основании? На каком основании вы хотите меня забрать? У вас указание? Сообщите конкретно вашу фамилию.
Что мне ваша фамилия?
Ну вот, меня интересует, кто вы такой. Вы вот в форме, ваша фамилия. Я художник, а вы кто такой?
Уберите эту дуду отсюда.
Вы что, хотите, чтобы я вас поддал под суд за ломку аппаратуры? А? Ну куда вы уходите-то? Ну объясните ситуацию. Что вы здесь составляете скандал, шум?
Мы просим ваши бумаги.
Я вам сказал, вы не имеете права у меня спрашивать бумаги. Я вам объяснил. Что вы говорите, пьяный? Вот этот милиционер. Вот зрители говорят, что он в нетрезвом состоянии.
За клевету еще вас накажут.
Ну, товарищи, кто из нас пьян, я или этот товарищ, а?
Нет, слушай, там шарики играют, ничего.
Да? А шарики-малики это что там? Деньги, да? А милиция не знает про шарики-малики?
Да нет, он не говорит, зачем вы ссоритесь. Он говорит, у него есть разрешение, но почему не? Но права-то у вас, вы можете даже к нему не приказать, пойти, позвонить, пропагандируете людям интересно.
Вы можете запросто. Ну что, товарищи, вы поняли, да, в чем ситуация?
Well, I was trying to comment, but you couldn't hear my voice, no?
Yeah, it was not hearable, or the sound of the video.
Yeah,
The
always
video was
problems
in
with the
Russian,
sound.
so I guess people can
But
hardly
I tried to comment it
maybe you
to
interpret it backwards. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I could just say a couple of words later if you. It was a performance, and you know, and police interfered, but Shazia was the artist was actually prepared to that, and he was in the beginning he was calling the police with his handmade phone, which was really funny. Yeah. Shazia was this kind of obscure artist, one of the many in Kazakhstan. That's why it's also somehow important for us to pay tribute to him and to his work that he was doing. That was absolutely, you know, unnoticeable, unfortunately.
Yeah. And artists in Kazakhstan often feel that they are not quite real. Shazia was this kind of artist who presents now in the history of contemporary arts feel sometimes somewhat ghostly. And he was perceived as a city's Rain Man, a shadow artist, something like this. And nobody knows him still.
Yeah, that's also because of our interest in shadows and ghosts and people who don't feel real. I mean, I think it's a big problem in societies like in Kazakhstan, for instance, because to be recognized as a real, you really have to work hard and to conform to many conventions. That's why in our work we try to be inclusive to not only real people and real objects, but also unreal or quasi objects or shadows, or maybe even shadows that are cast away by the solid objects.
Yeah, I suggest we are already almost 1 hour in.
So maybe we skip this shadow thing, right?
Yeah, I suggest to skip.
Okay, let's skip the shadow thing.
And
because shadows, they just they're just shadows. Let's put them in the shadow.
Yeah, and it is well known that the main social function of institution is to determine what is real and what is not. Institutions are our ontological machine, but their work of purifying, of separation between truth and illusion is never accomplished. Between real and unreal, there are many shades of gray. Take, for instance, the so-called quasi-objects. If you swap 2 letters in the Russian word объекты, objects, you get objetki, leftovers. But can objetki also be represented in our little theater? I'm not sure, but maybe let's see how it could be.
Что за ерунда? Какой вообще к черту театр объедков? Мы не собираемся играть ни в какой театр. Мы презираем ваш спектакль. Подите в жопу! Вы сделали с нами это, и теперь хотите развлекаться? Нас ничего не ждет, кроме мусорного ведра, и в гробу мы видали ваши онлайн-развлечения. Да, мы мусор, мы отходы, но мы в каком-то смысле чище вас. Да, у нас свой мир, и когда-нибудь мы погребем всю эту планету под собой. Да, мы похороним ваше общество вместе с его паршивым спектаклем.
Sorry, we had to skip some of the things that we prepared to show in order to save time. And the last one is about this canceling the spectacle. So shall we cancel the whole show, or shall we continue? This is another question. For the last finishing piece, we prepared a video where we tried to explain our attempt to be radically inclusive. I think this radical inclusion is a consequence of some kind of feeling of detachment, or loneliness, or isolation. When you're isolated, you always try to be really, really, really inclusive. But still, yeah, I see these comments about it was tragic somehow. That's true. Because, objects are all of us are objects for someone. So, I don't know if we have this time for something less tragic, and for the video that would give us some hope. But maybe before we could talk a little bit.
Yeah, maybe after.
What do you think, Dima? Because we already
actually,
an hour.
There are some, thank you, there are some very crucial questions actually arrived, and from the very beginning. And one is really like we run into that tragic and dramatic situation and said, how to make art when the state makes our life absurd? The question comes from Anatoly. He could maybe elaborate if he feels like, but at the same time, I feel also the same pressure. But at the same time, I wouldn't agree that state can make our lives absurd. State can do many things. State can eliminate our life, but at the same time, the sense to life is bringing from something else, and art one the possibility, at least my opinion. But of course, I'm sorry to interfere into question addressed to you.
I would like to ask if, because I don't get how the actions of state can what's the connection? Why? I think that many artists think that it's exactly when the state fails and the state behaves like this, there is a it's more it gives the artist more opportunities to be critical, to be humorous, to be satirical, to be needed or even demanded. So I don't think that there is it's a disadvantage in terms of the worse is life, the more artists have to do has to do somehow. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So how to make art? I mean, it's easier to make art when the life is an absurd.
I'm not sure, but maybe we listen to Anatoly if he wants to comment.
I faced. I mean, I encountered this opinion before. I remember that at some literary readings, poetry readings in Berlin, we had a conversation with a poet who immigrated from Russia long ago, and she said, well, here on the West, it's so hard to be a poet because everything is like kind of okayish and your life is good. And but in Kazakhstan, you are lucky to have all of these problems because you have a lot of things to write about as poets. So that's what I'm trying to. But I don't know. No, for me, it's like the more absurd life is, the more work for artists, with the more. We have a commentary. Shall I read it out?
Yeah, but I'm very welcome people to not to write in the chat, but better to talk, because actually your all mics you can just switch it on and just comment. Then it will be much more lively, and especially if
we have this comment. It seems when the state makes our life absurd, the artists are better and stronger. We are absolutely great. Thank you. Yeah, yes, in a way. Yeah, it's strange to call it an advantage.
May I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Yeah, don't you think that sometimes state makes better art than contemporary artists do?
Well, to be honest, I'm against this habit, or I am against when people start calling art what is not art. I mean, because it started from I think from Baudrillard, who said that the war in the Gulf was no, he said that September 11 was like greatest performance ever done, or something like that. And there are a lot of speculations about terror attacks and about really awful things like war and mass killings. And somebody always call it an art, like a performance or something like that. For me, this is something we really shouldn't do. If yeah, because it's the same logic as if you read this Boris Groys Gesamtkunstwerk Stalin, where the whole logic of this book is that Stalin and Stalinism was just corollary, or how the was just a continuation of avant-garde revolution in arts that took place decades before in Russia. And I really disagree with this logic, because, you know, we have to separate what artists do and frame as art, and what kind of shit, whatever happens in the world, that of course can make, of course we all see, like, we see life as a spectacle, we see life as presented and produced by media, but still we have to be careful in calling something art, because it's just not.
But here I think that most confusing how we determine what is absurd, because actually what state is doing with our life in particular, you know, these days, yesterday was very tragic, because actually it was heartbreaking video which you showed about Catalan police use in Kazakhstan. I actually never heard about this practice in Russia. In Russia, they looks like, you know, we have always what we call button, you know, and actually in Russia they simply arrest people and take them to warm places, you know, but to cattle, 3 female during winter, this is really torture. And I guess for me, it's that current situation where a lot of that post-truth and a lot of different events are happening. Of course, we don't really need to describe them or speculate if they are art or not, but they create such a background that the voices of artists becomes really invisible and somehow socially relevant. That's a big problem, especially for us. Right now, I feel quite serious unease, because, you know, for many years we speculate that art can have certain public influence, change life, change the world, and so on and so on. And right now we see that heaps of bastards who are really changing the life and the future of our planet. And in front of these massive, you know, grandiose events like Stalinism, you are really feel helpless, and you feel depressed, and you really feel you need very strong commitment to continue. So I don't know, how do you feel about it? I also have some questions, but actually before I would like to enunciate them, it was another very good question below. Just a moment. If you imagine institution, it's quite related. Why would you care about real, not imagined life? It comes from Svetlana Peshkova. Maybe she could actually elaborate or comment on it. But at the same time, I guess they're connected, because actually you are very playful with different agencies, with something which exists and non-exist, material and non-material, very speculative. But at the same time, when you show in the middle of your presentation that hardcore real stuff, I still feel kind of shocked. And actually, for me, it was also, if we discuss your presentation, for me, you know, that was another video which actually very interesting comes together when the police was kind of in drunk police attack this artist in 1991. Police looks completely stupid, artists feel completely confident in kind of, you know, defending themselves. And this kind of huge contrast, because those times we show that evidences of completely vulnerable, weak bodies are absolutely open to the violence. And after that, you really feel kind of really deep shock. At least I'm speaking from my perspective. Guys, here we kind of assembly, you know, and you can comment I don't really need to interfere and comment everything. So, but that question, how you care about real, how imaginary politics and real politics fuse together, as we saw in your presentation.
Thank you for this question. I think it's an important one because you cannot think of imaginary without thinking of real. They are the two, these two categories somehow inform each other. They create each other, mutually created. And from my personal perspective, you know, my interest in unreal and in unexistence comes from my own feeling of this. You know, I always have felt that I'm not real enough. I'm not a real woman. I'm not a real artist. I'm not a real Kazakh. I'm not a real person in a way, because I cannot integrate in the society as other normal people do. So there is a certain, you know, launch for being more real, certain desire to be more real, to connect to reality, to reach the reality somehow. And which is, I think, this feeling of being unreal or under existent. I very like this, the word under existence, which is similar to, you know, there are people who, how do you say, underachievers, right? Underachievers is someone who, like, a loser. And my failure is I often feel it as a failure to really be. That's where I fail. It's difficult to be. That's why I'm talking about fantasies. And I'm used to live in my fantasies, like in imaginary worlds. But why so? Because I cannot get into the real world, because the doors are like, it's, for me it's very difficult to live in the real world, and this difficulty makes me turn to the arts, turn to all of these fantasies. And I think it's these two categories are, they are so connected. And I think that the problem is, I mean, it's not my personal problem, because I am a transgender or something, or, you know, I'm a Kazakh citizen who doesn't speak Kazakh, or, you know, all of these things. But it's as far as I can see, it's a social problem which is quite common. And I think that the redefining boundaries between real and not real is our focus, so to say. It's not about one or another, but it's about the boundary and how the boundary is being constructed. And I think that it's important to keep in mind that institutions, social institutions, primarily are machines that do this separation, because you always need an institution to prove that something is real or not real. It always takes an institution to make the final verdict, the final decision that, hey, this is real, this is not real. Take art, take whatever, take scientific institutions, take just, you know, our passports or whatever. It's always needs to be a stamp, or, you know, it's always needs to be a institutional decision in order to prove that something is real or not real. Yeah, that's so. I think that if we are talking about institution, like art institutions, for instance, inevitably it brings us to this question of what is real and what is not.
Can I respond?
Oh, please.
I just want to quickly mention that. I mean, I think point number one is that art to me is a mother of science. If they're not mutually sort of co-created. then I would go for that. But I mean, literally, historically, you look at it, that's what you see. You know, the science, the philosophy, whatever you call it, cosmology, whatever, I think comes out of art, our kind of creativity with the external environment. But in terms of imagined, so like I hear you and I'm with you, you know, the imagined and real is a false dichotomy in a way, right? But at the same time, you were talking about real not being able to be real, right? In the real, right? In the institutional. So I don't know, I feel like there is work to be done, maybe just beyond social criticism, to make the usual the unreal, if it makes sense.
Make usual rather than real?
Make usual the unreal.
Ah. Yes, but again, it would take an institution. Because, yeah.
But can you comment on about, because actually we all kind of shared more or less this kind of ubiquitous critique of the institutions and their repressive role. I never use that categories of real and unreal. They render something visible, relevant, and they make the process of evaluation. What is socially important, what is socially less important. At the same time, you create your own institution. At the same time, do you recognize it as a certain kind of fight and struggle for visibility, for become real, or is it lines of the flight? So you kind of being reaching certain visibility like we are doing now with the Institute of Radical Imagination. What is radical imagination? It's also a good question, which we discuss a lot in our Phantom office, which is on air every Friday for internal meetings, and we have quite heated debate always. And at the same time, yeah, I mean, art is really something, but at the same time, making art is making something real. So, because even in a very immaterial enunciation, you know, we certainly reach that certain materiality of the presence. Like I see you now in a digital way, but at the same time, I know that what happened right now, it will be archived, it can have references, so certain kind of researchers who follow and analyze, because through the body of work which we saw in first reel, which you show, it's incredible corpus of work which make you very real, I would say, despite your ephemerality, despite your ghostish kind of spectral style of presence, but at the same time, ghosts can really have material forms. Are you interested in this material form? Are you interested in certain social impact, or you escaping it? So I know it can be both, but at the same time, would you comment on this? Or
Yeah, that's not easy to answer, but to be honest, I would say, of course, we are looking for, you know, visibility and recognition. I think it's unavoidable for artistic work. Artists always need someone who will be your audience. This is part of this ambition to be an artist. If there is an ambition to be an artist, it's inevitably involving, you know, the audience, someone who will be watching you. No, we are not trying to escape, or all we try is as far as I can see it, is as I would like to see it. We are engaged in an experiment. For us, it's just an experiment. What if I will be not presenting myself but I will be presenting a certain organization that is somewhere behind me. What if the text that I wrote was not by myself or by like text by me and Masha, but it was the text by the institution. The perception of things that are made by institution is completely different, even if it's clear that the institution itself is a fake. It's very interesting. It's very close to all of these experiments with the signature, because in art what is important is a signature. It's not that important that what is done, but who is signed the artwork. And so when we started to sign, so to say, our artworks with not our names, but with the name of the institution, it changed something. I don't know what, and I'm interested in how the whole landscape, the whole, everything is changing when you start calling yourself an institution. And I'm just curious, also in more general question, what institutions actually do and how they think, because I'm quite sure that they are not just a compilation of people. They are subjects in themselves. They are creatures or entities that have their own intentions, their own behavior that is different from intentions and behavior of the people who constitute the institution. There is a classic work by this famous anthropologist, what is her name, who wrote the book about purity, and she also wrote this book, How Institutions Think, in 60s, where she writes that...
Mary Douglas?
Thank you, yes, of course, Mary Douglas, yes. And and this is a classical kind of anthropological study of the institution, and there is a conclusion that institutions are entities in themselves. They have their own things to do. They have their own minds. And this is, I think it's incredibly interesting. I think that institutions are entities that are more than human, that are much more powerful than humans. And they really have this power to turn things into real and make unreal real and real unreal. So they can do things that individuals cannot. And if you I could offer a lot of examples, but just think of the most powerful institution that we have, kind of institution that we have now. It's a nation state. And if you see, for instance, what nations do in terms of what kind of war they can do, what kind of mass killings they can afford, or what other, nobody, when there is a war, you wouldn't find an individual who would be interested in this war, but nations can be interested in war. And I don't know, it's just when an architecture cannot build a building, she just make it out of paper, like paper architecture. So we do the same. We have ideas, idea of an institution. We cannot make it, but we can make it on paper. And speaking about this materiality of artistic work, I think that yes, I absolutely agree that artist has to do something material. Otherwise, it's I mean, immaterial work is bullshit. All work is material. But we just try to make some really big things with some very small, little, tiny means, like paper, like pen.
I saw that Svetlana. Sorry.
May I participate as well to
yes,
comment?
Please, yes.
Thank you so much. It was such a great pleasure to be into your amazing event. Sorry, being with a mask, but I'm working now in the Werkstatt of an institution, and it's compulsory to be with a mask. I just wanted to intervene here because it seems to me also kind of dichotomy if we are talking about material and immaterial in a kind of juxtaposition, because we know even nowadays from the scientific point of view, there is a big concern what is matter and what is not because of the wave, how the particles, sometimes they act as material particles and sometimes as waves. And I don't want to go into this physics or scientific statements, but let's go back, I'm old-fashioned, to Lacan. Or the post-Lacanian context, when real is actually the void, is something that collects the imaginary and the symbolic. And I really like when you talk about the social relevance, how the institutions legitimize or make socially relevant something and something that is not socially relevant. Like if you are undocumented migrant, you're socially irrelevant, or you even doesn't exist for the state structure. And because of this, like for me, it seems that actually a phantomic art institution can be more powerful, seems to me, than if it's embedded into the so-called political and social reality, which is legitimized by the state institutions, perhaps. It makes everything like, I think, the power of the phantom, that you can always intervene and go into in between the interface. Because I really like when you talk about human and non-human, that we have to be very careful, like how the objects are also part of who is the signifier. Perhaps the objects are more powerful, or the infrastructures of the institutions. But then I think we have to be very careful what we call imaginary and what we call symbolic or real. I mean, I'm not a Lacanist. I'm just like kind of taking this as a possibility to provoke you, because I think somehow we kind of have to make a distinction between real and reality. Yeah, and I think that's because you're this kind of material institution makes you so powerful in a way, powerless and powerful. How you
Yeah, thank
take
you.
it this?
I would like to avoid Lacanian real, symbolic, and imaginary.
Okay.
I mean, at least I don't use these terms in Lacanian sense, not at all. Rather in social political terms, like what makes you real, what makes you feel real as a citizen, as an artist, as a human being, because when you are deprived on like basic human rights, you don't feel real. No, that's but it's interesting that Lacan and all of most of the philosophers, and especially psychoanalysts, think that real is something that something that is so powerful and so unknown and so unpenetratable that you cannot control it. It's something that really scares us. If you for Lacan, real is something that you cannot even encounter. You cannot touch it, but it can destroy it like in a blink of eye. It's something extremely powerful, and you just take this shelter in the world of imaginary, you construct your symbolic space and so on, but the real is something that you cannot just, it's something really unhuman. And for I think it goes from the Freud, for whom there's a principle of enjoyment, right, and the principle of reality, the two conflicting principles, and what you desire is always in conflict with reality. So reality is always is always conceptualized as something that you cannot cope with, is as something that is you cannot do anything about reality because it's just reality. It hits you and it can destroy you at any point. So it's something threatening, something really scary. And I don't like, this, because I try to find the way to talk about reality in more maybe friendly terms, because okay, we don't know what is reality. We can only speculate about that. Maybe that's why I'm also interested in contemporary speculative philosophy, because there is an attempt to think of real things as more friendly, as something that is closer to us, actually, because we are part of the reality. We are not scared, frightened creatures who only can hide in their own worlds, bubbles of imaginary something. We yeah, I don't know, it's maybe too complicated, but maybe we shouldn't go that far into philosophical questions of what is real and what is not, but it's really interesting to investigate.
But can I ask, I don't know if there are more questions in chat, so we have quite vague discussion if Lacanian approach is valid or not for whom. I'm sorry, I'm also not specialist in that at all. But actually, I would like to ask, because actually, you know, your examples, and as far as I understood, your steady interest to Kazakh archive of performance and how you locate yourself, because your, so to say, roots, you know, we spoke before with Michael Martin about roots and vegetal forms of life and politics. And actually at the same time, frankly to say, I can hardly imagine that such phantom appearance could happen without your link to that very special geographic, geopolitical, decolonial type of relations, which you somehow escape and somehow demonstrate in a very explicit way as we watch today. So could you a little bit comment on that particular place where you come from, being in and out? And yeah, and I think it would be really interesting to problematize, because as we say, no one even goes without roots. We all have certain roots and our roots are on the move. So somehow we place them in certain situation and so on. But at the same time, for me right now, after speculation on nomadism, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit obsessed because I just finished one article about From Nomad to the Roots, where I was trying to observe and problematize this particular turn when, you know, my generation was completely obsessed with nomadism, this kind of endless less of essentialism and so on. And right now you see more and more voices which speak more about that indigenous position, about new form of locality, and as Marder speculate about Occupy movement as something rooted in locale, you know. So that's why for me, you're also kind of rooted in that Kazakh situation. Was kind of your burden which you try to deal with, escape, but return. So I would like to hear about it.
Right. That's true. I mean, what we try to do. I think that roots are always, in a certain sense, roots are a construction, like any genealogy, you know, and we are interested in new ways of constructing it. Because when we started to think about that, the situation was like that. We both were born in Kazakhstan. Like my parents were born in Almaty, in the same city where I was born. But half of my family was Kazakh, half of my family was kind of Russian and kind of Kazakh. And when after the independence, it became obvious that there is a, you know, an empire, the Russia, and its huge influence in Central Asia, with all of these histories of colonization. On the other hand, there are Kazakh people, and this nationality of Kazakh people who, from the beginning, it was like the implication was that Kazakhstan is the country of Kazakh people, and all other people so I was kind of always been in between, and I didn't like this duality again between indigenous people struggling for their independence, for their land, and these, you know, colonizers, newcomers, outsiders who came here in 19th century or in 20th century, whenever, and now they are kind of, you know, people who don't have all the rights for this land. So I really didn't like and still don't like this idea that the land belongs to certain ethnic groups or something. So I was just trying to, what I was trying to escape was not my own genealogy or my own situation in Kazakhstan, but rather the existing conceptions or ways to conceptualize this situation. That's how we started to read Edouard Glissant about this situation in Caribbean, and also Gloria Anzaldúa, who is kind of very similar to us, because she in her book about borderlands, she writes about this situation on the border between Mexico and the United States, when you are half there, and you are also a queer person who you know, like when you cannot fit into existing categories, into existing ways of conceptualize your identity, your ethnicity, your gender, your language, your culture, it just doesn't fit you. Nothing fits you. And at this point, you start to create something for yourself. I think so. This is where, I mean, I feel my roots. You know, my roots are in this attempt to construct or reconstruct roots in my own way, or in some way that is not that black and white, you know. Because when I was a little child, I was always constantly asking by adults, "Are you Kazakh or Russian?" Because everyone knows that my mother is Kazakh and father is Russian. So that was the most funny, most common question that pissed me off, just, you know, and still does, because I don't want to choose whether I'm Kazakh or Russian, and I don't want to choose. I mean, for me, it's like choosing between mother and father. I don't want to. That's how this idea of new cosmopolitanism came about, because I feel that, okay, like old Kantian cosmopolitanism, like white Western cosmopolitanism, has been discredited somehow, but still there is a demand. I can feel it even here in Vienna when we talk, hang out with migrants, with people from all over the world. Actually, they're not privileged people. They're not, you know, rich people who have proper passport and can travel and calling themselves cosmopolitans. No, they just were pushed from one boundary to another, like through one boundary to another boundary, and you know, it's like we didn't cross the boundaries crossed us in this kind of situation. And there is a certain, I can feel certain demand to conceptualize this new situation when you leave a certain, because you just don't have to leave cosmopolitan life, you don't have to actually travel. But for instance, there are a lot of people in Kazakhstan who just sit in the internet and have all of their cultural education and bring, you know, from the internet, from English speaking websites and movies and music and books. And this creates, I think, a historically new situation when a lot of people just don't feel belong to their countries in terms of, like, you know, nationalities, I would say. And we have to think about it, like, what if nationality as a concept is obsolete? That would be my question to the audience. Would you agree that the concept of nationality is kind of out of date?
You know, I guess definitely is, but at the same time, we also see certain possibilities of delinking nationality and land. For example, you know, my obsession with Zapatism and others situation when actually, you know, you can create communities on land which not subjugate to national state, or like Kurds, or don't even want to create national state. It really new type of relation to the place which not really want to create that kind of repressive despotism of the state, but to recreate kind of new type of relation. And I think it's really also, it's also can be expanded idea what bring us and how we, how to say, defend certain situation, because politics have more and more that local struggle. And actually what came before into my mind when we were speaking, when you speculate about nationality, because right now national state become very kind of dominant in a time of pandemic, and especially right now when recently, just few days ago, I read few more and more increasing number of articles which speculate on uneven distribution of vaccine. Some states have vaccine, one nation have, other not. Even inside Europe, that European Union, that uneven redistribution create incredible tension. So that kind of demand to universal vaccine kind of becomes very urgent. It's matter of saving lives, you know. And actually national state play on one hand very protective role and at the same time very discriminative role. Sorry, I'm talking too much. Maybe I really appreciate if someone else will join our discussion and maybe ask some questions to Maria and to Rufia. Yeah, would be really nice, because we're already almost 2 hours here. Maybe Masha, you'd like to comment something. She was very present. most of the time.
I think everybody is tired. Everybody are tired and
Me not.
Me
Full of
Me
energy.
neither, you know, I woke up after my skin, you know, tiredness, you know. Yeah.
Sorry, Ken?
Yeah, Dmitry.
Again, I'm very active.
No.
Just a little remark, because I'm not Lacanian, I'm also more like following speculative philosophy, though it's a huge, many different, even sometimes against each other, tendencies and directions. But symbolic is the language, is the field of the language. And in Lacan, and then the imaginary is the field of reflections, like from the first artistic discovery of yourself in the mirror, then to all idea of reflecting. No, but I'm just going back to your discussion about identity and the role of the state. And I completely kind of embrace this idea of feeling neither Russian nor Kazakhstanian. And I'm quite skeptical regarding your kind of giving up of nomadism, of the idea of nomadism, and going into this localized new, I don't know, the politics of the locality. I'm quite skeptical, because it seems to me that perhaps we have to be neither nomadic nor local. In a way, because with the local, there is always this, it's quite danger to become a tribe. And then we know from one tribe to the next tribe is also a matter of a lot of negotiations. I mean, like the whole existence is, let's say, not reality, is a matter of negotiations. But at the same time, I think like we need to be cosmopolitically local or locally, I don't know, like kind of being both, or even, I mean, I don't know, it sounds also quite scary sometimes, because even if in a very alternative and very like ultra leftist context, if we have like squads and people who are protecting this territory because they need to fight for this occupied territory with the police and so on, but we know that often the newcomers, if you are an artist, for example, and trying to go there, often there is a hostility. You have to be recognized as one of the community. Yeah, this is my comment. Sorry if I was talking so much, but you provoked me emotionally to participate.
Totally fine. I don't know if it was actually directed to me, because I'm also quite trying to advocate that kind of dialectical synthesis between two positions, between nomad and certain form of rootedness. So, and there was some discussion on chat about Kazakhstan, which I can hardly follow, but if you feel like to vocal it, so please do it. So.
Maybe Anatoly could explain the question about what kind of state we have in Kazakhstan. I was referring to the nation state as this modern, invention.
Yeah, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was discussing some, like sometimes I have discussions with nationalists in Kazakhstan. Some of them call themselves decolonizators, and some of them call themselves nationalists. So most of them say that we don't have the national state in Kazakhstan, like the ideal type of national state. Although they are like nationalists and decolonizators. They still refer to the national states in Europe, and it's kind of ideal type like of the state when the state like when the nation kind of wake up. It happened in the middle of the 19th century in Europe. Yeah, like all this the spring of nations and so on and so on. Then there is a period of kind of somehow the renaissance of the culture, language, maybe national religion, and so on and so on. Like some signatures, like signaturas of the what is nation, and then there is a period when nation, some kind of the nation is very aggressive and how to say the push out or physical
Expands.
or physical no like push out all the foreign bodies
Ah.
or these like уничтожает
Eliminate.
Destroy.
yeah, destroy, eliminate these foreign bodies, like people who are not the part of the nation, something like that. And then when we are all kind of the same nation, then we are like we are going to be happy, and that's the national state. That's how it should be. So do we have something like that in Kazakhstan, or we don't need this in Kazakhstan? Do we need to go through this the whole process or not? And I'm not sure if we really have this national state, or we have kind of national state that we just got some some institutions that were like that somehow um, grow up in this process of the national states, were like somehow progressing, not progressing. I don't like this word progressing. Like during this national state like lifetime in Europe, they just somehow invented some institutions, and we just took them. That's why maybe it doesn't work, because like all these parliaments and courts and everything, maybe we just, because it's kind of foreign for us. We don't know how it should work, because we don't understand the internal logic of.
I understand.
Yeah, sorry. That's the.
It's I think it's very common way to think about things in terms of stages. You know, before you get to a certain stage, you have to go through all the points that other people came through at that like stage of thinking. Like you cannot get it. We had this very interesting conversation about this regarding art, when I was trying to say something like, but before people start appreciating contemporary art, like post-avant-garde art, they have to do these stages. First of all, like old, the classic arts, and then modern, and then, you know, postmodern, and so on. But I don't think that stages are necessary. Really don't think, because now actually it was Georgy Mamedov who was opposing me, and he said this thing, that this is the question of how subjectivity is formed, how subjectivity can come into being, and it would be strange to claim that there is only one way to become a subject. You go through all of these stages as if you're talking about some biological organism, that it has to be a seed from the beginning, and then it grows, and then and only then. Subjects are not like organisms. It's something more complicated, and I think, and I'm quite sure that there are many ways to reach like to construct something meaningful, or to reach some, you know, state that is in a way progressive, or not progressive, but somehow more human than than we have now. So I think that I mean, I disagree with this picture that we are so young. Kazakhstan is so young country that we need to make all the way through historical, cataclysms, just the way European old nations did. And Eduard Glissant also wrote about that. He said that he called European old nations atavistic nations because they naturalized their the thing is why it is so important for them was to like the status of being a Frenchman or like English or German. It's a title, also entitlement, and you get this status. It's a higher status, right? Like to be, for instance, to be in Austria, to be Austrian is higher status than to be Kazakhstanian. But how this status achieved? It was by this history of purifying, of expelling all the Jews and all of other in different history periods there are different others, but you need to construct the other and to expel them, and so basically you need to be violent to build a proper state, and I really don't believe in that. I think that
but I'm not saying that we should become the national state. Like I'm when I discuss with nationalists, I say that I don't want to go there. Just like to this kind of ideal or not an ideal type of national state. Just let's create something different. Why should we? Why should we go the same way? It's like it's obviously dramatic way of doing things like they did in Europe or throughout the history. So I'm also like, I don't know if there are really these stages or not. I just don't want to go there. That's why I'm not sure that we have this national state yet, but I don't want to have it. Let's this nation, this state at the very beginning. Let's stop the nationalism at this point and just turn other way. That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, as moderator, it can really be very hard debate about national state and catching up development, and I'm sure it will be. But maybe looks like people are already leaving the room, and our party almost slowly coming to the end. But at the end, I would like to ask maybe usual question: what is the plans of Phantom office and KRÖLEX Center, what you're working on, what you find inspiring in the moment, and how your situation changed through that very dramatic times, because we feel like, I don't know, I'm speaking from my very subjective perspective, but at the same time, it looks like that we all kind of in a very turbulent moment of transformation. You know, it's a school of mutation, as we call it, from the very beginning. So the question would be very straightforward. How do you mutate in our time, or you mutate at all?
Oh, Masha, how do we mutate? I don't know. Actually, our plans are about imitating institutions more. I'm really, as an artist, I really getting more interested in bureaucracy and all these things that are imposed to us by nation, state, by police, by all of these like structures that that are enforcing people to behave properly, to do certain things, to comply to all kinds of conventions, to have passport, to have stamps, to have everything in like all documents in order. And I mean, it's a little bit Kafkian interest in how bureaucracy and what is it, because it's a very powerful thing. And looking at all of these organizations like Ministry of Culture in Kazakhstan, for instance, I'm following our Museum of Fine Arts in Almaty, because I'm really interested in how these big monsters work, how do they behave, and what if we start mimicking them? What if we start issuing certain documents, with our own stamps, and compete with the states? Like it's actually there is a whole tradition in arts, like this nation. What was that?
Irvin, it was.
Irvin, yeah, that's Irvin. They just issue passports, and you can own their passport and become a member of this state in time. I think they call it state in time. And I'm very inspired by this multitude of new homemade institutions that we have now in artistic field. Like, not talking about Institute of Radical Imagination, but also you, Dima, in St. Petersburg, you have a lot of Ничего делать and all kinds of organizations that are very volatile, that are also like imaginary, but they are pretending to be organizations. They call themselves institutes, laboratories, or I don't know, theaters or museums. They take these titles for them and try to mimic, to imitate as if there is an institution. And I think it's very important. And there is a growing interest in these self-organized organizations, so to say, and small initiatives that call themselves institution. Why? I think there must be something behind it, and I think it's important to, because again, we know very little about how institutions work and how they develop and what are they. We have like no clue. We just create them, and oftentimes they consume us, and they can devour us, and they can do really bad things. And but it was created by us. Like army is an institution, like KGB is an institution, like everything is all institutions. And the people everywhere are very nice and good people, but why these institutions do so awful things to us? That's the question.
So, any more comments, or we should slowly? Actually, if you are interested, I can really bring you in contact with Victor Mizian, who is right now making a new issue of Moscow Art magazine on new institutions.
Wow.
And actually, it's quite, many people speculate that it cannot be unchanged, that actually that collapse and even that long postponing and canceling the project, because what I see right now as a person who works with many institutions, I see right now that they're really kind of in ruins. They're collapsing because for them to have that long-term plan for 2-3 years right now, things coming one over the head because they were postponed and the new projects start, how to make it. So it really, right now people start to think, and biennials, what to do with biennials, what happens with the travel and so on. The whole infrastructure of our, tiny, not really tiny, but huge international art world with different institutions is really demands very big change, like the politics in general. But unfortunately, we are surrounded by such a huge monster that so hard to predict how it will be developed. Yeah. And we are more contagious, and art is a virus. So as we all know from old songs. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Masha. Thank you, Rufia. And actually, I hope to see you again. We love you. Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Спасибо.
Yeah. Ciao, dear. Bye. Thank you. Bye.